And welcome to another episode of Jason and Bart Show.
Yeah,
I thought about actually recording like a whole intro, but I think this is fun.
as long as you like to do it every week, and then as soon
know.
as that's over, there'll be an intro that's automated for everybody. But for
No,
right
it's
now,
just hilarious because if you look at the audio graph, it's so much louder when I do it. My everything is like
those first 5 seconds are where you really bring the energy of the show, and from there, it's just like a cliff afterwards.
It's like the music in the back, and it's like hey, hey. Anyway, guys, welcome to another show. We're this is
Welcome
like
back.
our
Welcome back.
12 something.
Something like that.
We're on a roll.
We're rolling, rocking and rolling.
Rolling.
We are
Keeping time. Keep in time, sir. Keep in time. Trying to get it all out there. And speaking of time, sir. Ooh, that's a good transition.
very nice segue. That was almost professional. I don't want to get too carried away, but almost. Yes, we're going to talk about time tracking.
Time tracking.
Time tracking. Everybody's favorite topic. Bart, why don't you tell us all a little bit about your feelings about time tracking? I mean, you guys are a retainer-based organization, and we'll get into a little bit about how, like, the contextual reasons for time tracking across different kinds of contracts or projects. But for you guys, how important is it? How much weight do you put on it? What do you think about it? Tell us everything.
When it comes to externalizing it to clients, we don't really do time tracking. We do it internally for the purposes of making sure there's a profit, we're doing stuff efficiently. But there's the value of, that's what the rate we do. It doesn't work that way. For us, it's just the efficiency of it. Are we efficient? Are we actually doing stuff properly? And then our retainers are actually based on how fast a team works with the client. And that's, we started as just throwing money at the wall and saying, hey, this is what it's going to cost you. This is how much work we're going to do. Now we kind of have more of a, the Kanban maturity model. We actually do look at sort of how fast a ticket gets done or how many tickets we can do in a week with the client, meaning it's not just based on us, it's based on the client too. So, and then we just have this average of of how fast we can work. And then we just, we kind of figure out from there. That's about it. It's really based on that. It's not based on, this is how much billing time we have to bill our client. We just don't do it that way.
Yeah. So let's spend like 2 seconds on the external, because I agree with you. I think the majority of this conversation is about sort of financial and operational building block of a services company, right? And I think for those of you out there today, I think this is going to be a conversation sort of very rooted in more on the services side of digital agency work than the product side. Although time and tracking time and product definitely has its place as well. But yeah, I think on the external front, so you talked about how you don't really externalize hours to clients, but clients are obviously buying essentially the equivalent of a bucket of hours every month or every quarter from you guys. Are you providing them with, I buy 50 hours a month from Sumo for X amount of money. What do I get at the end of the month that tells me that I got 50 hours of work against my retainer?
You get none of that. You do not get bucket of hours. You do not get end of the month type things. That we got rid of all of that stuff. It just doesn't make sense in our world. That's the way we think about it. We know what the effort looks like, of how much effort it takes to do something, from just experience and how fast we work with a client, and that's how it is. Our retainers, you just retain our time. You get a slot in our world. That is it. Our SOWs are written that way. So because then it's planning every single week with the client how much development we do or how much product we deliver with them. But it's not based on hours. It's kind of weird how the look of it. It kind of looks like value based, but it's like it sounds
the value. Like
Right, but the value is not predetermined. It's kind of what it will end up to be, but it's all about us delivering as much as we can with the client itself. So it's
Not to
never based on hours.
Yeah, not to go down a rabbit hole of how you do retainers, but are they buying, is it the same amount every month?
It's not. It's based on work. It's not based on hours at all.
Okay, so it's really
So it is the same.
the word
Yes,
retainer is a
the
little
way
bit
our retainer.
misleading.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's the way it's really sometimes it's hard to describe the way we do this, but it's basically we figure out what how much effort we can put into a client every single month, and it's usually the retainer is exactly the same. It's like kind of like subscription type of thing.
Mhm.
Now, if they bring more projects, on the back end of that, we kind of know how much we're doing, what our profit margin and stuff like that. We're about to do another iteration that just additional iteration to it because we figure out little things here and there where we probably will put two people on a project with some admins so that like or not like some management on top of it so that we actually are it's project by project type thing.
Mhm.
So there's definitely iterations of this, but it works really well because all of a sudden you have this like we know if we're over our workload for a client. So sometimes you're doing this, right? Sometimes it's
Mhm.
like this. One month is did look too much. The next month is very low. Like we track everything. Um, but over the months or over the year, it evens out like crazy. And
Yep.
that you have this systematic for us at least. What's cool about it is that we take away the money conversation, the all that away from the project managers or the product from both sides. So they just get to work. And we realize how fast or how slow we're working. Um, so that's part of
So they
that. So
don't
it's
pay the
never
same
cut into
thing
our.
every month.
We get paid at the same thing. Yeah.
So you get paid the same thing every month, but you don't necessarily work against that same payment every month the same way every month. It ebbs and flows, and it ends
Yeah.
up kind of evening out at the end to be what it is.
Yep.
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, it took us about 4 minutes to go into a rabbit hole that was off topic, but thank you. That was really
It's
that's
not off
actually
topic. It's
really
just the
interesting.
way it's against, it's totally opposite of hours. And I get where hours come from, and hourly work because it's the easiest measure that people can look at, right? It's the idea that but it's trading your hour per, that's the value, right? It's trading an hour for work instead of what can you deliver for. Here's how I look at it in reality of it is that when you look at hours, it definitely is putting the client in a negative position completely because you're just I mean, you can do all those hours. Whereas for us, if we're giving the same value in an hour for a client, but others could spend 10 hours because they're billing time that way, it's our job to work faster to make the profit, right? So that's sort of the way I look at it is like it is our job to make sure we're more efficient and faster working
Mhm.
with that sacrifice. Like it's still making that money. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. It's a weird thing. Like why are we getting punished for knowing how to do job faster?
Right. Well, no, and I that's what I totally understand, and that's where it does bleed a little bit more into value, right? Then because
Yep.
you're right, you're not doing straight T and M. Where I was saying it was a little off topic is just like the external client side of it, because you said something in the middle of that was really great. Where you said it was a throwaway line in case everybody missed it. He said we track everything, and what he was saying is for internal reasons, right? For financial and operational reasons, they are still, as much as Bart just spent the last 5 minutes talking about how externally to the clients, the tracking of hours doesn't really matter in their value proposition of how they deliver their products and services to their clients. What he is saying is it doesn't mean that they don't track it, right? And so bringing it back to time tracking, and I think this is a really, really good point you're making, is I think time tracking is largely it has more benefit internally to the company than it does externally to clients. And uh, one of the places I wanted to start today was a little bit about the perception of time tracking by your teams and how messaging and communication around time tracking and why it's important, and educating your team as to not just you have to do this in some kind of pedantic way, but also here is why it's really important. And because people, I feel like, inherently sort of default to the negative when it comes to time tracking, and it becomes about like Big Brother. Oh, you want to know what I'm doing every 15-minute block of time I have, blah 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 blah, right?
Yeah.
And I also think, and I'm sure I'll get punished for this statement, but like, I'm not a technologist, and so, but my experience in working with people in technology is that they are particularly sensitive to the idea of too much oversight and too much Big Brother, that sort of crimps their style on how creative they can be as a developer or a designer, or so on and so forth. And by the way, it's a perfectly valid um, point of view to take. Um, I think it's leadership and management's job to make sure that when you're talking about time tracking, it's less about the actual act of tracking your time and more about, again, why is tracking your time so important, and why is it actually good for you, the person who's tracking time? Not just why is it good for us so we can track effective billable rates and utilization and all things that, the team on an individual basis probably doesn't care as much about as we do, but why is it actually good for them to be tracking their time? And how do you switch the conversation or the perception from, hey, this is about sitting over your shoulder, even if you're a remote company, virtually kind of making sure you're working all the time? That's not really what it's about. What it's about is optimizing the work environment so that we are learning from data, from information that we're getting, and we're making better data-driven decisions to create a better, more optimized environment for everybody to work in. This is, I think, a really important message that leaders sometimes miss out on when they're trying to communicate the importance of time tracking to their team, and really focusing on and messaging the why. And this can be part of, I know a lot of us, and I know you guys do, and we do too, a lot of us, our values are not just lip service. A lot of us really do live our core values. And I'm sure we all have core values that, relate to hyper communication and clear communication around why we do things and the overall good of the team. And every decision is made for the overall good of the team, and making sure that that gets across. And again, I think I saw something recently where an owner posted something about providing like physical incentives for tracking time. And I was like, and I thought to myself, see, to me, if you're messaging the why correctly, if you're actually getting across to the team, this is for their good, you shouldn't have to incentivize it. The incentive should be obvious as to why it is important. You're not asking people to track every bathroom break. That's ridiculous. So you have to be somewhat responsible about what you're looking for. But I do think making sure that you're explaining why this is part of the job of working at a company that does client services. And this applies, quite frankly, whether, and this is why we were talking about, it's an internal activity, why it's so important, is it does apply across whether you're doing T&M work or fixed bid work or retainer based work. Again, because those things are so important. And I think when you're expressing to your teams, why is time tracking important? The real question you're asking is, what can accurate time tracking actually tell us? Because if you can explain that to everybody, not just say, hey, look, this is going to make us a better company, and you walk out the door and everybody's like, I don't even know what that means, right? But if you say, hey, this is going to make us a better company because this is what it's going to tell us. It's going to tell us, are we estimating correctly in the sales process? Are we setting the team up to succeed once the project closes and we hand it off to the production team, who now has expectations on them from leadership to deliver a project in a certain way? That's the first thing it can tell us. The second thing it can tell us, all of us on the team, is competency level of the team. Where are our strengths and where are our weaknesses? what kind of tasks do we blow out of the water? And to your point on fixed bid or retainers, where are you getting ahead of the curve? Where are you able to do the work, faster or ahead of your estimates? And then also, even more importantly, quite frankly, is it shows you where your weaknesses are. What are the tasks that you consistently miss your estimates on? Is it because the person doing the estimates or people doing the estimates are having a hard time getting it right? Or is it because the team is not living up to the expectations of the people doing your estimates? Right? These are really, really important things to
Yeah.
discover. And time tracking is one of those really important ways that it can tell you a story and kind of pinpoint very specifically if you're gathering data over time. Because a lot of our projects, while they're for different clients, and of course they're all slightly different, a lot of the things that we do to put together a deliverable to a client process wise are very much the same.
Right.
Right.
Right. It's so funny. Is like the incentive of time tracking is
Or
interesting.
is it
Like,
scope creep and you can't have your PM can't control the project, right? That could be another thing,
right.
right? So,
Right.
sorry, Bart, go ahead.
I hate the idea of incentivizing it. It's
Oh,
so
so do
weird
I.
because like all of a
Here's more
sudden
money
it's
to do
like
your job.
well, yeah, but it's also like you all of a sudden kind of in a weird way are saying sort of like what attorneys do, right? Everything is billed. That's the job. You build and that's how you get paid. And like it's such a negative way of looking at it, but it's true, right? If you're doing that way, that's the point. Like we have to have some metrics to determine how much are we actually profitable? Are we not profitable? Like the end of the day, like yeah, we're not giant corporations, but we still have to have a company that's making money and being profitable. Like
Sure.
that's given, right? If we're making like the whole incentive is listen, if we're tracking all our time and we can bill all that time, however you do it, means we can make more money and actually be a better business and be better to you. It's for you. So I don't understand the idea that I have to incentivize somebody to do that. Like
Well, there's a lot, like
it's
I said,
the
there's a lot of
job.
there's a lot of resistance to do it and or to manage it because again of the perception of because leadership is not getting across to the team again why we're actually doing this. It feels to
Right.
the team like the only reason we're doing this is because somebody upstairs wants to look at how I spend my day. And for whatever reason, that message of that's not what we're doing. We're doing this because, yes, we do want to know how you're spending your day. We want to know all the ways how we're spending our days so we can make your days better here. And here are the ways in which we do that. And I think this is the key is you have to be able to express it specifically to your team, right?
Right.
These are the
Right.
things we're trying to fix here, and we're going to provide you with better teammates, with better work. For a lot of agencies out there, they're doing a pretty wide variety of work. I think it's really important to know, like, if you do open source work, are you making more money on Drupal projects than you are on WordPress projects? If you're an e-commerce company, are you doing better on Shopify versus WooCommerce? I don't know, whatever. But the whole point is you're never going to know the answers to those questions if you
Right.
don't understand the building blocks of how you're delivering to your customers. And that is how you're spending your time. Because at the end of the
Yeah.
day, whether it's value-based, fixed,
Yeah.
T&M,
Any one of them.
the
I just
relationship is an exchange of time for money.
right. Sure. I just
Yes,
it's
there's a
just
deliverable. You're right. But I mean, at the end of the day, there's an
yeah, yeah.
effort.
I look at it as like it's the job. That's what he's supposed to do. And now, yes, you're correct. The messaging has to be you're right. You can't just be like, we have to track time. It has to be submitted. It has to like if it's not submitted, we're not billing you. You're not making like we're not paying. Like that's just silly. You're not contract. Like if you work somewhere full time, that's a different story. It's just part of the job.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you have to like say it in a way that's a little more the data there's got to be something in between like incentivizing you to time track. It's like yes, incentivizing meaning you can make more money, but it's not
Well,
you get a
again,
lollipop.
it's also another way to go like, hey, if you accurately track your time, we can make sure that we're not overworking you. We can make sure that we understand how long things are really going to take. We can understand,
Right,
and all of this leads to a better work experience, doing better, higher quality work, under,
right,
the least stressful conditions we can provide, yada, yada, yada.
yeah,
Yeah. And again, it really does apply across all those different types of work. I mean, T&M is obvious. There's not really much to talk about there on why time tracking is important as it relates to T&M contracts. On fixed bid, again, I think you're talking about fixed bid contracts generally have a little bit of padding in them, because if you're going to fixed bid, you're basically saying there is a percentage here I'm never going to know until we actually get into the project, but you're basically telling me I have to tell you a specific answer. So therefore, because there's a percentage I don't know, but you still want an exact answer, I'm going to put a little bit of padding into the fixed, right? But that's really important because that breaks down into estimation. And again, estimation in the sales process and delivery optimization during the production process. Again, if somebody says something should take 100 hours across 5 projects that are all the same, and team A does it in 500 hours and team B does it in 300 hours, you're like, what the hell is team B doing different than team A is when they're really doing pretty much the same work? Is it just the people are at different levels, or is there something else going on there? And that is another way that you can, operationally, streamline your business, another way to add more profit and efficiency
Yep.
into your workflow, so on and so forth.
And kind of going back to what I was saying about how we do stuff, it kind of what you just said kind of explains it in a nice way, is meaning that it's about the people. It's how fast that team works, right? So could be 2 different teams working 2 different ways and how fast they deliver stuff. So it's a kind of weird distinction on that, but that's how we kind of figure
Or
those
not,
things out.
right? Or are we setting you guys up for
Right.
failure? And how are we ever going to know that unless we have accurate data around how you're tracking time against things that you're being set up to either fail or succeed against? Like, estimation, by definition, it's in the word. It's not an exact science. We are estimating here. So the way that we get better at an inexact science is to accumulate information over time on how we're doing it. So we continue to get better and better and better. And the better we
Yeah.
get at it in the sales process, the better chance we're setting up the team for success upon delivery to the client, which is what everybody
Yeah.
wants.
I mean, estimation is part science, part art. If you really think about it this way, this is why we don't do it.
Yeah. Well, and this, I wanted to segue last into retainer, I guess, which I thought this was the context that was thinking about why time tracking is important for retainer work. And it has actually very little to do with the revenue side of it, because, while we understand that the hours are, well, I guess in your case, the hours are, the receivables are fixed, right, on a regular basis on the retainer side. So therefore there's MRR. I think it's still important to understand the cost of those hours on a monthly basis, because the cost of those hours can change, right? You can either, maybe you give raises to people and suddenly, your margins shrink because you're the team doing the work last month now costs more this month than it did last month. Or maybe you've had to change people out or rotate people out of the team. And maybe somebody who's making $80,000 a year as a developer is replacing somebody who is making $55,000 a year as a developer. Again, these kinds of things, as you go through time tracking, this is really going to show you and give you a lot of that information so that you're also staffing properly, not just by skill set, but also by ability to optimize and maximize your profitability.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's it. That's what I got on time tracking today, everybody.
Speaking of time, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, speaking of time,
I'm just full of puns. Yeah, this is just I'm just horrible. I'm
Bart's in a
sorry.
weird mood today.
Sometimes it happens, man. You get every single shade of me sometimes.
You got to roll with it.
Roll with it.
So
Jason?
what are you obsessing over?
Right now, trying to think. It's been interesting. Travel again. Weirdly enough. Meaning I'm going back to conferences almost every other day, every week or every third week. So, obsessing about like I haven't traveled this way in almost 3 years. So you get into that mode of like, okay, do I have everything? Is my usual like gear packed up like you usually do? Do I have, can I remember all those little things that like, oh yeah, have this, and this. This is how this works. Here's the work. Like, here's the routine of when you get to the airport. This is what it is. Can I get through it? And I gotta say, yeah, it's like riding a bike, man. except for so we record this beforehand, but I'm flying to South Carolina on Sunday, and let me tell you, 2 days I hate flying. Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah.
Absolutely hate flying those days. Especially when I used to fly every other week or every week nonstop. I hate those 2 days to fly because this has nothing to do against anybody. It's amateur hour at the airport.
Oh, for sure.
Especially and this is always the craziest part for me, especially in this TSA pre-check lines. It is amazing to me how people have them, but they don't fly enough, and their families and like, you know what I mean? Like regular people fly, and it's just sometimes I'm like, I can't.
Happened to me. We were at the garden recently, and it was like people were trying to figure out like how to actually get into the place using their phones, and it was like, and there are like 3 different ways you can do it, and that just confused people more.
Yeah, yeah. Well, at the airport, so I was flying to Miami out of JFK a few weeks ago, and it's funny because flying Delta is interesting because they have pre-check line, they have a Delta or a premium pre-check line, then they have clear with pre-check, and then clear premium thing. I don't know what that is, but it's the lines are like clear starting to get bigger and bigger, which is
Yeah,
hilarious. And now I'm going to tell a story of Jason, who doesn't have any of these things.
I've cleared.
Finally,
Finally,
um, being in
I
Orlando,
need to get the global entry. It's so
global
stupid.
entry stuff. Well, global entry with clear is like even better, as proven by last time we both were in Orlando, and you left an hour and a half before me to go to the airport, and I met you at the train 2 minutes later after you crossed.
Dude, that was the longest. That was the longest line I've ever seen at the airport. It was. It was.
Dude,
I'm not kidding. Like it was a mile and a half. I think it was like a mile and a half long the line, something like that. Like
I
wait,
loved it. It was one of
I
the
think
funniest things.
I think the Orlando airport has like 2 wings, like a east and a west, or a north and a south, or something. And I remember, so obviously we're in security to go into one of the 2 of them, but the line wrapped all the way to the other wing or whatever or the other terminal of the airport.
Dude,
It was yeah. I was
I
like, oh hey
walked up
Bart.
to I walked up to the pre-check thing. It was 20 minutes.
And I think my flight was
Just,
actually delayed also, so you got on your plane before me. You were going to Boston, right? From Orlando.
no,
I
you
think
actually did because you left. Yeah, you were fine. But it was funny because I had clear and I walked out. I was like, yes. It took me literally a minute to get through security fully. And I texted you right before getting on the tram thing or the train thing, and I was like, "Hey, where are you?" He's like, "I just got on a train." I was like, "I'll be right there."
that might have been the trip that really inspired me to get
That was
to at least get clear. Yeah.
that was one of those. That was really funny. I was like, "Dude, I don't know how you travel and not have any of this." I could not. Anyway, thank you for listening to us blab sometimes and talk about time tracking this time. We are going to have more guests. Our first guest was awesome. Yeah.
Yep.
So stay tuned. See us next week. And thanks, Jason.
Peace.